let's talk a little bit about some of the recent drama that happened with the podcast.
Oh, man, you want to go there, huh? When he said, like, hey, I want to come on the podcast and share my story because I know that there's other entrepreneurs out there living with these deep, dark sins. I couldn't believe that he really wanted to. I said, are you sure you actually really want to do that?
Why'd you decide to take it on?
Well, I just heard her scream. And I already knew. Like, I have like an intuition that is like uncanny. There's doctors, lights, sirens, completely different than being at home and having a home birth. But then also to see birth and death at the same exact time, out of body experience where my spirit looked up and went down over the situation and said, just so you know, there's going to be good that comes out of this. I never hear entrepreneurs talk about their wives like the way that John Ruhlin talked about his wife. Every call, he was saying something awesome about his wife. God called him home, and I think it was because it paused all these entrepreneurs. I mean, thousands of us paused. How do we be more like John, right? It's through listening to people's stories and figuring out where the issues are. I can't believe we just finished up 100 episodes of the Big Fish Cares podcast. It's been an incredible journey, and we're getting ready to kick off season 3. In today's episode, I'm going to turn the script around and I'm going to get interviewed by a friend of mine. But before we get into that, we are going to give you an update on everything that's been happening in my personal life since the last season, and also talk about some of the podcasts that we've done over season 2 and give you some of the professional wins. Also let you know about some of the things that maybe didn't go so good, right? And so I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is Noelle Kramer. She's helping me do a lot of writing, and she has been instrumental in helping me be able to create awesome stories and be able to tell stories so that way we can have better guest experiences. And she also might be helping me write a book. So keep that in mind. If you guys want to support the Benny Fisher book, just send me your thoughts and comments on what you guys want in the book. But I'm really excited to get this episode kicked off with my friend Noelle.
All right, so I'm actually really glad that I got a chance to interview you because selfishly I get to learn a little bit more about you. So I thought maybe we'd start with just a quick personal recap. Talk a little bit about some of the different things that have happened in your life in the past year.
Yeah, so the last time I was here and I got interviewed by Chris Callan, who's one of my creative directors, I realized that was last summer when we did that interview. And I remember one of the last things I told everyone is that, Brittany was pregnant. We were expecting a baby, I think, in December or January. And unfortunately, that baby passed away during birth. And that was a really tough moment for me and her, obviously. And that happened, my birthday, September 1st. And that happened on September 3rd last year. And so that's one thing that was probably the biggest thing that happened in the past year. And it happened almost just 2 months, I think, after I recorded that podcast episode. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned in that.
We'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. You want to do that now?
We can.
Or it's up to you.
Since we started, you're straight into it.
You're interviewing me. So there's also, other things that happened last year. I also got to do some really cool, I got to do a big speaking engagement. I got to be the opening keynote speaker at the EOS conference.
That was probably huge. Yeah.
That was like a dream come true. That was, I hate to say, I don't know if I manifested it, but I remember being at the EOS conference 2 years ago to my first one. And I remember hearing that entrepreneur story that they always kick off with on the opening. And I was like, man, that's my story. I have a story just like that. I was sitting in this audience of 2,000 people thinking wow, that's crazy. And then I went the year after and I'm like, wow, I have that same story. Just, obviously it's different stories, but that same roller coaster of stories. And then to be able to share a stage with Gino Wickman, that was really cool. And then obviously to be able to interview, I had Gary Vee on my podcast, in season 2. That was really cool to be able to fly to New York City and interview one of my heroes of, business and marketing, to just meet someone like that, and spend time with him. That was awesome. And then just this last episode, doing it with Gino Wickman. 2 guys that I really have shaped my business career kind of after. Gary more in the social media and content world and trying to be a good human. Gino more in systems and processes of how to delegate and elevate and get yourself into a place of freedom. And using that freedom, I've been using that freedom to heal a lot more over the last 3 years. And then with his new book, that book that just came out, Shine, it was just really beautifully well written. And then like for all that to come together for me and my own personal journey, like, you know, and I just turned 43 years old, and it was, yeah, I'm just super excited and grateful for some of those things that happened in my life, even the tragedy that happened, because there's a lot of good things that came out of that.
Right. So we talk a lot about how things don't happen to someone, they happen for someone. So explain a little bit of some of the lessons or some of the different things that you've gotten out of both the happier memories and then also the challenge with losing the baby.
Yeah, let's start with the baby experience. There's so much to cover with that. I think, and I actually, me and Brittany actually did a podcast that we sat here and did it. We decided not to air it because I don't think Brittany was completely ready to share her complete story. I think after she did it, she was like, wow, that was a lot. But she did get it out of herself, you know, like privately, just me and her. Cameras were here, you know, Cody was here. And I think that helped her, you know, a little bit, just to like, you know, because I know her story is going to transform lives like all over this world. But a little bit of background, and she told me that I could share this. You know, it hasn't always been easy being in a relationship. It's hard being in a relationship, period, right? And so it's constant work and constant effort. And, you know, this is my second, you know, relationship where I'm committed to someone. And the first one obviously ended in divorce, and I wasn't really that good of a human. Definitely could have done a lot of things better. And so I learned from those previous, I don't want to call them mistakes, but that previous life of mine, like I've learned a lot of how to like maybe be more connected to my spouse or partner, right? And to like, you know, show up more, right? Because I show up a lot in my business life, you know, sometimes, or the things that I want to show up to, right? Like, you know, if it's a podcast, like I love doing podcasts where like I show up this and, you know, and if you look at my podcast resume, like I've had some really cool guests in just my first 100 episodes that, you know, most people would dream of. I dreamed of, like, I didn't even think that was possible. And so this, I think I've shared this before on podcasts where like, you know, me and Brittany have been through some highs and lows in our relationship. You know, there was a time when, I think right after Evie was born, where there was a lot of, what do they call it after pregnancy, after a birth? Postpartum, right? And even before that, see, Brittany suffers with severe PTSD. And it's from childhood trauma. And I started to really learn about this after our first year together. You know, we started doing therapy together because, you know, there was these episodes of like, where like she was not the Brittany that like I knew, like calm and peaceful Brittany, like would like not be so calm and peaceful, and she'd want to run away. And I kept trying to like, hey, come back. Like, you can't run away. Like, come back here.
Not her response.
Yeah. And so then I started learning a lot about fight or flight. I started understanding, like when she told me, you know, like the therapist said, hey, you have this PTSD. Like I started really understanding that. I read a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'll never forget is when I said, like, what, like I've known from my own therapy journey, like stuff all starts to muster from childhood. And so I started to unpack her childhood a little bit, you know, and one thing that happened to her, you know, when she was 5, she was sexually abused by a 15-year-old boy. They would have to watch porn together. And
was this someone?
Yeah, it was like a neighborhood. Yeah, it was like a neighborhood kid. Oh, you know, when she was telling me about this, I was just like, I was mad, super angry. I'm like, what's his name? Like, I was like, literally, like you like destroyed this beautiful soul. That's how I thought at the time.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think much differently of it now.
How so?
I think that chaos and that crazy amount of abuse at that early age caused Brittany to seek and crave peace at a level that is transformational.
So something you
does that make
before,
sense?
It does.
Okay.
And I think that something you said before is learning what her triggers were. Is there a way that you've kind of learned how to navigate and how to help her through that?
Well, yeah, and I was not that good at it before. And I will tell you, and we can get to this in a second, after the baby passed away, the one that came early, and it was just too early to save. She had to give a full birth to like a baby that passed away basically at the same time. It was really tough, but I was I was really in the moment. I was really present through that because I knew I wanted to like just be there for it. Because like old Ben would have been like up and down the hospital aisles, like, you know, on the phone texting people, like just like nervous, like, you know, like not knowing what to do, right?
Yeah.
And like just yeah. And I just remember through all the therapy and all the work that I've been doing is like, all right, I just need to be there for her. I need to hold her hand. I need to stay right there by her bedside the whole time and like watch this with her and like be there, right? Just like I was when Evie was born. And this was going to be, I already knew, I was preparing myself. I knew this was going to be a completely different experience, like completely different. Evie's was the most perfect home birth that you could ever imagine. Everything was like perfect. She came out perfect, came out beautiful. She's 2 years old today. And everything is like, it is a fairy tale. What happened to me last September was the complete opposite of that. And what that led Brittany to do is Brittany then, one of her therapists recommended that she go to this grief retreat at Kripalu. It's like a meditation and yoga retreat center in like on the border of like Massachusetts and New York State. Okay. And so we said, hey, go up there. You know, I said, me and your mom will watch the baby. We'll watch Evie. Just go up there and just see what it's all about. And that was like about maybe 2 months. I think that was like in October. And so it was like, you know, maybe October, early November. I can't remember exactly. And she went to do that. And that was a big thing, right? First of all, she needed to leave Evie for, you know, like a week, like 4 or 5. Evie was 1, just turned 1 at the time. Mm-hmm. And she went up there, I think, to like figure out how to grieve the baby's death, because she wasn't doing very well. Like her PTSD was like spiking, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, it was getting better and better. Like just to give people some perspective with her PTSD, like it would be peace, and then like, you know, let's say on day 4, like I could like just, I don't know, something could just set her off. Like it might be me, might be somebody else, could be a family, it could be a friend. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden it would peak like to a 10, like her level of like, you know, like anger or frustration, like a 10,
just
like
emotionally reactive,
and not necessarily like nothing bad, like nothing, like I'm looking at it like nothing actually really happened. Like, what's different? And then there's the frequency. So there's the intensity of like when it happens, and then how frequent it's happening. And so back in the early days, this would happen like, you know, it'd be peaking at a 10, and they were frequent. Like it'd be like every 3 to 5 days, you know, there'd be like an episode. Mm-hmm. What it taught me extreme patience, because I would always want to go fast. Like I want to react to the reaction, right? Like old Benny, like would react like to anything in life, you know, whether it's a customer I'm doing business with, whether it's an employee, whether it's a family member. Like I'm always just trying to, like, I'm an activator, right? That's like one of my number one strengths on the Strength Finders is activator. And it's
so you had to learn a different way of being.
I had to learn a way different being than the way that Ben was out in the wild versus like Ben inside the home. Mm-hmm. And when she came back from that grief retreat, here's what she told me that she learned. It was actually less. She thought she was going there for the baby's death, but her dad had committed suicide when she was 20.
Oh gosh.
And I don't think she ever fully was able to process that, because again, she was probably always in like a chaotic, triggered state from the sexual abuse, and then having to like basically raise her younger brother and sister because her mom and dad were kind of in and out of her life a little bit. And that was just a lot of pressure on a, you know, teenage girl, an adolescent. You know, when that happened to her at 20, I mean, like that's a big deal. Like that's a big deal for anybody, even when you're like calm and all the time, and like, you know, it still sucks, right? Like when a parent would die, like that's got to be one of the most awful things that could ever happen. But when she came back from that, she was like, I actually learned how to grieve for my dad. And I go, wow, that's powerful, because that's probably been holding you back a little bit.
Yeah, from everything else.
Mm-hmm. And I knew at that moment when she was going through that, when she had to deliver that baby in that whole like 24-hour period that happened. I remember thinking, based on everything that's happened in my life, the good and the bad, right? I knew that every terrible situation that I thought was terrible at the moment always had a silver lining, always had like, oh, this was happening for me, but I never knew until like I look back. But now I've been able to, and I don't know how to explain this to humans, but I've been able to see that quicker in the moment. Like when something bad's like
so you can separate from the moment to understand.
Yeah. So like I'm in this hospital bedroom. She's having to give birth. There's doctors, lights, sirens. It's completely different than being at home and having a home birth, right? But I knew that like, yes, this is a negative experience. Yes, she's going through pain. But somehow like I like kind of had this out of body experience where I like my spirit like looked up and went down over the situation and said, just so you know, there's going to be good that comes out of this. And to be able to see a baby being born, first of all, is an incredible miracle. But then also to see birth and death at the same exact time is like, I hope no one has to ever see that again. But there's something very spiritual about that whole experience to see it at the same time. And it's like you instantly had this this birth of this like perfect little like, you know, baby. But then she was an angel like right away at the same time. And it was like a wash of like all of these emotions, like, and they were all hitting me like at an equal level. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this was created. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this just passed away. Like, oh my gosh, I can't like so many different emotions washed over me. And I didn't know like what good, you know, at the time, but I just knew I'm like, oh, something good's going to come out of this. Like something to mirror. And I kid you not, 60 days later, when she got back from Kapala, those triggers were down to a 5 and the frequency was down to a 5. And that was 60 days later. I'm talking like her whole PTSD is almost like, I feel like not cured. Cause I think you just manage, like, just like my ADHD, like I always have it.
Yeah.
But I have to manage it, right? Like I have to like manage, and I'm not comparing the two because they are completely different. But it's like we manage it. We don't necessarily cured from it, I don't think.
Yeah.
But it's not like I let my ADHD, I don't think about it every day. Like it's not like crippling me. And so what I've watched Brittany go through over the last year is like her PTSD is getting better and better and better, and she's able to live a fuller life. Her light's able to shine brighter. And then when that's happening, I'm shining brighter. And it's like a really cool back and forth. And it's like, that was our little, like, Ellie Hope was her name. And Ellie Hope is like our angel that like basically cured her mom.
Wow. That's a beautiful way of looking at it.
I think that's the only way to, because literally that's what happened. I mean, that baby came for a purpose. And like that baby is still with us in spirit. But like I'll never forget that baby caused her to go to that grief retreat, spend time with other females that were grieving, had an amazing grief coach. If I remember, I can't remember, it's Amar or something. I can't remember his last name. It's a
we'll figure it out.
Yeah. We can put it in the notes. He's on Instagram. Dude is an amazing guy. He's got like this big long beard and he does like these dances and she's still like does coaching with him. And like those two working together over the last year has been transformational. And so like, I wanted to tell that story for a couple of reasons. First of all, to give people a little bit of perspective on like my inside of my life a little bit. Also, because if you're ever out there struggling with like, you know, whether it's PTSD, sexual abuse that, you know, you can't get out of your mind, things that control your life. So sometimes that we block down and shove down, right? And then we don't realize how it affects the rest of our life until we can become set free from it. And, you know, there's different healing modalities and different ways you can go about it. But for her, if that wouldn't have happened, she wouldn't have just went and left her 1-year-old for 4 days to go to a grief. I mean, we literally like said, you got to go, because her therapist, Joni, who was actually on my podcast a couple episodes ago, really made a strong case for it, because she said she loves that place, Krippala. And yeah, so that's where like, you know, I saw it as soon as she got back, and I was like, she's a changed woman. I mean, it's completely changed. I thought 2-3 years ago, I'm like, wow, we're going to be dealing with this forever. And it was like, and I was prepared to do it because it was making me a better husband. It was making me a better human. It was making me a better man. It was making me a better leader. It was making me have more empathy.
But that's hard.
It was also creating me a more feminine energy inside like this like very like high masculine like energy that I had. And so, and I could tell by the way people would respond to me and communicate with me that like I was communicating at a higher frequency, which actually was a lot more effective for women and for men, and in the workplace, and like just not in the workplace, like just wherever I was at. Like I was a lot more patient. I was listening more. I was like just pausing more. And so through that whole process, like I changed like completely over the last 3 or 4 years. And so
did that help you with your grieving process, do you think? Because you lost a baby, you know?
Yeah, I think it helped me. I think it helped me too, just see like the good that came out of it. But really to see the pain that she was in going through it at the moment, like I'll never forget, like when we were home, like it was like, we just got done celebrating my birthday. My birthday was on the 1st. I think it was on the next day in the morning, the 2nd, Evie was with her mom. Cause like she gave us the weekend, like, you know, hang out and have fun with my birthday. And I'll never forget, like, I just heard her scream and I just like, I already knew, like, I know, like I have like an intuition that is like uncanny. And it is, and I just knew that I'm like, all right, Ben, you've been here before. You've been in some terrible situations before. You got to go down. You got to be with her. You got to make her feel safe. You got to make her feel like she's protected. You just got to like, just get through this, go into action mode, like, you know, and just be there and be present and be present. And this was probably that was the time that I was the most present in my life. Like that moment, I've never felt presence like that before. And I literally felt like God giving us a hug at the same time. Like while it was a 24-hour process being at that hospital from like the time that like, you know, they had to get everything ready and induce her and all that stuff. And yeah, so, but yeah, the silver lining, man, is like, she is thriving. The good news is, you want to hear this story? Oop. We have a baby coming. Yay! Yeah. Oh my gosh, yay. Yeah, so the baby, we don't have a name picked out, and we're not going to find out the sex. We decided that like we're like really going to go full surprise.
You're not doing the gender reveal thing where you
and she's like, you know what, you know, but no, because we're just, you know, the gender reveal will be like, you know, the day after I'll post on Facebook, be like, hey, we have a baby boy or girl. I think it's going to be a girl. We'll see if my prediction's good. I'll be happy with either because I have one of each. December 30th.
Oh, so New Year's baby.
Yeah, it could be a New Year's baby or Christmas baby. Could be like a 2025 baby. I know if it comes December 31st, that'll be good for a tax deduction for all you business people out there. But
I'm glad you're thinking that way too. That's great.
But yeah, so I mean, like it's definitely been an up and down. You know.
So tell me about when you found out she was pregnant with this baby.
Oh, put me on the spot. Where was I? Oh man, I can't remember. Because like she's been pregnant 3 years in a row now. And so they all kind of like weren't like they're all like very big surprises for me because I'm like, you know,
surprises are good, right?
Yeah, 43 years old. And like I never thought I was going to be making babies again. I can't remember exactly where I was at and what she told me.
How'd you feel?
She was really afraid. She was really afraid to get pregnant so fast. Like she didn't like, you know, we were, yeah, she was just worried and scared again, right? Because obviously, she, you know, she just went through that experience, and I felt I was excited. This is I mean, I hate to say this, the first baby when Evie was, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, you know, like I'm not ready for this. Like I'm not ready for this.
Wait a minute, you're a dad already. You know how this goes.
Yeah, no, I know, but like it wasn't like. But me and Brittany had just been in a relationship for like 2 years. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, we weren't actually like, you know, thinking about that. Like, I didn't even like think that, like, yeah. And so I was like really shocked, like the first time. I was like, what? Like, what? Oh, I'm not ready. You know, like I went into like, oh my gosh, like we don't have a big enough house. Like, we don't have we need to get a bigger SUV. Like, I went into all these things, right? Like I went into like guy mode, and I'm like, and then I was afraid of like the whole home birth experience. Cause then she's like telling me like how much like she wants to do this home birth thing. I'm like, wait, what? Yeah. Like, I didn't know anybody. Like I had one business associate in another state tell me like about his home birth experiences with his wife. And I immediately called him, cause like he was the only guy I ever knew that like ever did it. And I didn't even know him that well. And so I was really scared, you know, because everybody in my family, just typical hospital stuff, you know, just like pretty much 99% of the world.
Like a medical procedure.
Yeah, medical procedure. And then I remember talking to one of my mentors and coaches, and I said, like, she wants to do this. And I said, like, I'm totally like against it. Like, she needs she needs to have the doctors there. She needs to have the stuff there. We need to, like, I'm trying to protect, you know? And he's like, hey, Ben, he's like, every time that you try to take control of a situation, like, you should start to learn how to just let go and just try something different for once in your life of like not trying to control a situation. And that was like, what was it? That was 3 years ago, just about, like, when, I found out Evie was coming. And 2.5 years ago or whenever it was. Yeah. And so I did. And I said, you know what, babe? I said, I'm just going to let go. You're the boss on this one. Whatever you need, you just let me know. I had to go to like the doula training. I had to go to midwife training. I had to go to diaper training. I had to, like, we did all these things, right? And I was just enjoying the process, just enjoying the process. So it was, yeah. And I look forward to the day whenever Brittany's ready to come tell her side of all of that stories, because I'm sure that...
Oh, I'm sure it'll be interesting.
I'm sure it's different. Yeah. And then, and then this time I was just super pumped, like super excited. I was like, wow, God is going to bless us in a way. And regardless of the outcome, I've already looked at this now, like, cause I've had the best and the worst, like, and God's blessed us. And I believe that'll happen again, but when I do this same podcast next year after season 3, we'll have a big update. If you follow me on social media, you'll obviously get a little bit more insight, more like updates and things like that. Mm-hmm. On my podcast, I think there was a couple mentions of it. I think I did on the Jennifer Solomon podcast. I think I brought up that we lost the baby. So if you were, but I know people listen to the podcast aren't like listening to every single episode.
For those little phrases in between.
Yeah. And then, like, if, you get like stopped at a red light and you're getting your Starbucks, and like, you could literally miss that, like, 1 or 2 minute insight, right? Because most of the time I'm interviewing people, it's not about Benny, it's about the guest, right? And, I might tie 1 or 2 things to like what's going on in my life. But so, yeah, I wanted to give an update on that. It's been quite the year as far as at home, with that. But it's been awesome. It's been so refreshing. And we moved too. So we moved at the end of February, and we got a house out in Murraysville, which is like the Franklin Regional School District, which is east of Pittsburgh, about 30 minutes. We were living closer into Pittsburgh. And the reason that we moved twofold is, one, we wanted to be closer to Sam's school district. That's my 10-year-old. Cause I was always driving like a half hour to like go pick him up from school on Tuesdays and sports stuff. And it was just getting a little tough, right? Yeah. And then one of Brittany's friends saw a house, and it was like basically like it's completely surrounded by woods. And it's super peaceful, and it's like down a steep driveway, so you can't even really see the house from the street level. Like it's like just buried in the woods, but it's still a nice little neighborhood. It's 5 minutes from like the main drag of town, and like we're close to the grocery store, the schools, and everything like that.
See, I thought you were gonna say you moved closer to me. I thought, even though we hadn't known each other yet, I figured that was part of it. I'm gonna say that's part of the reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. But it's been really nice being out there, right? I never realized, like, I've never lived out in like, more out, I'm not going to say it's the country. It's not necessarily the country, but you're getting out more towards that. It's one more step to the country, right? Because you go out further on 22, then once you hit Blairsville,
it's farmland.
You're farmland all the way till you get to Philly.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, you might hit Penn State and then you keep going.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to something that you said before.
Okay.
Whenever you were talking with your business mentor about, for once in your life, just don't try to control something.
Yeah, he was giving me good sage advice, I think, on just how to handle your partner, right? Like, because I think he just realized that because he's older than me. He's like in his 60s.
Have you applied that elsewhere?
Oh yeah. Well, Gino talks about it. Gino turned me onto this book called Letting Go. This is before I actually knew Gino, where I had a relationship with him. This was just like, I was in a breakout at an EOS conference one time, and I asked a question, popped my hand up, and was like, hey, what 3 books would you recommend? And he told me to read the book Driven. He told me to read the book Untethered Soul, and then the book Letting Go by David Hawkins. Untethered Soul is by Michael Singer, and Driven is by Dr. Douglas Brackman. And when I read Letting Go, I just never heard of anything like that before. I never even, the concepts in that book about just letting go of control, like letting go, like, and then also understanding the psychology of going through this therapy with Brittany and understanding PTSD, like really shining a light on my own childhood, my own upbringing, my own, just my own path, right? Like of like how like I needed always to feel like I was in control for like this sense of safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because of the way our brains are wired, right? Mm-hmm. But then if you want to live a different life, you need to unwire that. Like Joe Dispenza talks about that, you know, a lot. And so when I read that, it's like, wow, I just need to start letting go. I need to let go more like at work. I need to let go more with people. You know, I've been I'm a recovering control freak.
And so how have you applied that then to your business? Like even through the last year, you've talked about some of the developments that have happened, but what are some things that you've let go of and you've seen positive results like you did with Brittany?
Just not having expectations, like trying to like, maybe that's the wrong way to phrase it. Not trying to like control every situation and try to control the outcome. See the salesperson inside of me. You know, I've been trained in sales for 25 years. You know, I've been selling. I remember I was 7 years old and I was selling candy, you know, to grandma, you know, for my baseball team. And then I started doing car sales when I was 18 and I've been selling stuff ever since at the end of the day, you know. And I think as a young salesman, I always like, oh, what's in it for me? Like, oh, I need to get that commission. Oh, I need to do that. But as I transferred from salesman to CEO, I realized it's what's in it for them. What's in it for the customer? What's in it for the homeowner? What's in it for the employee? What's in it for the leadership team member? And I'm really trying to, I'm not perfect, but I'm really trying to embody that more and let go of the outcome and just try to be more present, right? And so that's the other thing too. When you let go, because I'm not like my brain's not going a mile a minute anymore because I have nothing to go try to achieve and try to get. I'm able to calm my brain down and actually be more present and just be. And then I'm able to like just kind of let things unfold and not be so reactive, but be more responsive and like respond instead of react. And
trying to push things or
because I would always try to like, I would always like try to control every little thing. And when you're trying to control every little thing, things start to like, and once, because it doesn't work. And then once it breaks, and then you're like, oh, and then you get more frustrated, you get more mad. And like it just builds up and it's just like a hard life. And it's just like, it's very, it can be very chaotic. And I would like to do more episodes with people that are like way more experienced with this whole like thing of letting go. I'm just still practicing this over the last couple of years, you know, I'll never forget. It was hard for me to let somebody take over my marketing department at Big Fish Contracting. You know, like it was just weird to like,
all the things you needed to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember like just saying, all right, like, cause here's what I noticed. I and maybe it's cause I'm a little bit, I don't want to say the word extreme. I had a hard time just like being in the middle though, too. Like, so I had to completely let go. Cause I realized like, I remember when I was first like letting go of this marketing department and letting my marketing manager kind of take over, I would notice myself, hey, don't forget we got to do that. Hey, don't forget we got to do that. And I was actually taking her power away. Mm-hmm. And then that wasn't helping her grow. And it was actually just me making me feel more stuck in it. And like, I was like in this like middle area of like, I got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And again, because my visionary brain doesn't allow me to like, this is where like the integrator brain is a little bit better to like, you know, be able to do that, like be a little bit more steady. I'm like either want to be all in or all out. It's hard for me to, because I think I'm getting better though. I think I'm at a point in my life now to where like I can be part of something, but I don't have to necessarily push all the buttons, but I can still be there in spirit and energy and flow and kind of like, instead of being at the front and like leading the charge, I can be at the back and like kind of like shepherding and like guiding them. Like,
yeah, and you don't have to pull all the strings.
It's kind of like if I have like these like this triangle arm, like, you know, and all the people and all the customers and everybody's here and all the things, I'm just putting like some like boundaries and borders up. So then that way we don't get too, Yeah, we're not veering. I'm just trying to steer towards the vision, right? Because I see the vision way out in front. But before, I was always the person in the front running towards it, hoping that people would catch up behind me. And now I think I'm shifting into a leader, and that's why I'm excited for like the next 10, 20, 30 years of like, you know, being a leader, of like what it looks like to like lead from the back. Mm-hmm. Now I know I have a lot of other friends in business that'll probably be listening to this, be like, nah, you gotta be like the guy, the gladiator in like 300 or like, you know, whatever, charge. And I'm not saying like, maybe I'll go back to that way. I don't know, but I want to try it this different way first. Because I don't know. I think maybe I think there's some power in that too. Because I think for my own personal life, there's so much. I have a tendency when I am pushing and when I am controlling that I have some blind spots that can really affect me personally. You know, I think that's when I get into addiction, and I try to cope with all the pressures of some of that stuff, and it's not necessarily healthy for me, and then I'm not going to be a good leader for anybody. I'm going to be worthless in the front and in the back.
So as if you've been trying this lead from behind.
Yeah. Well,
how has your team responded to that?
You know, it's mixed. I will say that, you know, like, you know, it's mixed. You know, sometimes they're like, oh, like, you know, they don't feel Benny as much because, you know, Benny, especially like at Big Fish Contracting, you know, I haven't really been in the day-to-day for like the last 2 years. And partly because I've had this passion as I work with driven entrepreneurs to really help these guys. Like, I feel like I'm inspired. I feel like God's called me to like really work with these other driven entrepreneurs that are wired just like me, to help them figure out how to create some space so that way they can start their healing journey. So that way they become the leader, the person, the husband, the spouse, the dad, like the friend that they really want to be inside. And to me, that's what like fills my cup. That's what fuels me. And I also know that there's other people that are going to even be a better leader for the team members at Big Fish Contracting. There's people that have superpowers. Like the guy that we have leading Big Fish Contracting right now, Harry. I just was in a company meeting the other day, and like, I was like, wow, I couldn't have done that as like he did. Like that was way better for them than like the way I do it. And I was like, wow, that was really cool to see. And so I also believe that some of my superpowers have to do with like being able to connect dots and put people in their zone of genius in the right exact spot. And I know it's a cliche, right people, right seats.
Yeah.
I know everyone says that now.
We love you, Gino.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think that was even Jim Collins probably.
Yeah,
you know, originally,
yeah, exactly.
I think Gino probably took that from Jim. You're and right. Like whatever. But at the end of the day, it makes sense. I don't think Benny is ultimately the right. I think I'm the right person. I don't think that's the right seat for me. I think the right seat for me, and I'm still exploring this. You know, as you know, I'm only 43, so like I'm still exploring this. But the level of excitement, the level of passion, the level of joy that I get from working with other visionaries to try to help them become more visionary. And a lot of the reason they're not more visionary is just because they have cloudy glasses from all the dirt from their past, all the trash from the past that has clouded them up. They haven't figured out the systems and space to heal, to clean those glasses off so they can look forward to a clear and compelling vision. So that way they can operate in their zone of genius and be their true self, right? Like their authentic, free, like spirit, right? So then that way they can be the best version at home and at work and for themselves, right? And so, yeah, I feel like we just talked a lot about that. That was interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I also wanted to ask you a little bit about your friend John Roon.
Oh yeah.
Like he was someone who was sort of a mentor to you. It seemed like maybe not officially, but the relationship you were building.
The relationship that I was building with John Ruhlin was pretty incredible. I'm glad you brought that up. We're working on a tribute podcast episode. John was. I got introduced to John through a friend back when I grew up in Ohio. His name's Brody, and I think he saw that I went to do the Gary Vee podcast or something like that. And he's like, Benny, I need to introduce you to my friend John Ruhlin. And so we connected on Facebook Messenger. That's where I meet most of my friends, on Facebook Messenger. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of weird. But that's,
kids and their phones these days.
I'm telling you what, man. And John ended up scheduling a call with me and got on the phone with John. And he was just like such a bright light and just so positive and so happy and just so giving and like just was so inspiring to me. And he was just asking me questions about my business, about my life, what my goals were, like about Gary Vee, and just he was talking to me about EOS. He's like, yeah, I love all that stuff. Like, and I didn't even know who he really was. Like, I didn't even know, like, that he was, the author of this book, Giftology. I didn't realize, I didn't really understand, like, what his company did. Like, I didn't talk, he just kept asking me questions. And, like, that is a rare thing for, like, usually I'm the person that's super curious about everyone else. No one ever asked about me most of the time. I think that's just kind of what happens when you're an entrepreneur. Like, no one's checking in on you because everybody thinks that you got it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the persona that you put out, or that's...
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so curious, and that's why I love doing the Big Fish Cares podcast, because I love interviewing entrepreneurs, because I know, like, it's lonely, and I know that it feels good to, like, just sit and talk about life and some of the things that we've been through. But so I had that conversation with John, and like, I don't know, a week later he texts me. He's like, "Hey, by the way, what's your address?" And I'm like, I just thought he was sending me his book, or whatever. Crank, give him my address. Kid you not. A week or two later goes by and I get this box in the mail and I open it up and it's like a really nice box. It's like, it's got like a really nice cover. It's probably, maybe 18 to 24 inches long, maybe about 8 inches wide, 10 inches wide. I open the box up and in the inside lid, there's a video board in there, and it pops open and it goes, "Hey, John Ruhlin here." And he just talks about the conversation that we had like a few weeks before, and just recapping it, inspiring me, just made me feel so good, like made me feel seen, right? Like made me feel heard, like all the things that humans want, made me feel significant. Like it was unbelievable. I was melting. I'm like a grown man. I'm like, and another grown man who's like only like a year or two older than me. It's like doing this. I'm like, wow, who is this man? Like, this man is incredible. Like, I want to be more like that guy. Like, and then in the bottom of the box, there was like a 2-minute video, 3-minute video. And then the bottom of the box, and it's like in this velvet, cushiony, like really like just premium container. There's this leather, very high-end leather cinch sack bag. And I think it said, I can't remember if it said Giftology. I can't remember what it said on it exactly, but inside was his book. And it wasn't just like a paperback book or even a hardback book. It was like some type of I'll have to show it to you next time you're at my house, because I know you're into books and stuff like that.
Like that.
But it's like some higher level grade of a hardback book. Like the pages were even different.
Like a nice heavier texture.
Yeah, like it was just like everything was premium. I mean, like there was like, it looked like a $75 hardback book to begin with. Like it just looked like very expensive.
So he knows how to make an impression on someone.
Well, and that was this whole thing. And then I went down the wormhole of like learning about Giftology, learning what he did, seeing all of his YouTube videos. He was on a podcast with Lewis Howes, which was incredible. And then he would call me and check on me more than like any friend I've ever had has done. And I just barely even met the guy. I didn't even like, you know what I mean? Like I just knew the guy like just very shortly. And then when we started talking about, because when I got the EOS speaking gig, one time he called me and he was like, because he spoke on some of the bigger stages and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, guess what? You're never going to believe this. I got invited to be the opening keynote speaker at the EOS conference. Like I was so excited. I was like a kid at Christmas. I was like, I can't even believe it. Like, I'm going to be up there on stage and Gino Wickman's going to be closing. Like, and Gino doesn't even know who I am. I said, like, this is weird, but like, I can't wait. And he's like, yeah, man, that's exciting. He's like, I'm actually working out something to maybe speak with them at a different type of meeting at one of their quarterlies or something like that. And I said, yeah, that's cool. And he would just call me like, once, I don't know, once every 3 or 4 weeks and just see how I was going. And it was cool because we had talked, I don't know, August 1st. And we had scheduled, he was inviting me down to St. Louis. That's where he lives. And because I wanted him to be on the podcast. Like I couldn't wait to share this guy's story. And like, it was incredible and have him on my podcast and just spend time with him. when I shot the Gino Wickman episode in July and I spent like the whole day with Gino and it was just me and him, like after the podcast, that was just so, like, the podcast was cool, but the time you get to spend like before and after with the guest is even cooler. Like for me, like,
you get to really get to know that person's soul.
Yeah. And then we were going to go to dinner and stuff like that. And had all that set up, super excited. He even introduced me. I said, hey, like, since I'm bringing the video team in, I'd really love to, like, do you have anybody else in St. Louis that I could interview so I could kill, two birds with one stone? And like, he introduced me to his friend, John O'Leary, the guy that wrote the book, Man on Fire. And I was like, wow, man, like that, what a great, like, that's his first connection he hooks me up with. I'm like, that's incredible. Like, and I already knew the relationship and where it was going and like how, like, just incredible that this man just dropped into my lap, who like literally knows everyone in the whole world because of his experience with gifting, and like everyone just knows who John Rowland is. And then something really sad happened. I was on a call with Cameron Harold and talking about something else, and he's like, hey, I gotta let you know, just heard John Rowland passed away. And I like was floored. I'm like, no, like I have flights booked, I have a hotel booked, like I'm literally going there like in 2 weeks to, like, he's gonna be on my pocket. Like I literally just talked to him 2 days ago. Yeah, and he passed away. And dude, that hit me hard.
He was young.
Yeah, like 44, I think. Maybe just turned 45. I can't remember exactly, but he had 4 daughters, a wife. He always talked about his wife, always. And that was the other part that I wanted to be around that man more, because that man, I never hear entrepreneurs talk about their wives like the way that John Rowland talked about his wife. Every call, he was saying something awesome about his wife. I was just like, dude, I need to be more like that. Like how, like he was always like talking about his girls. Like one time he was on a video call and his girls was climbing over his truck, like, and she was in the call and he was just having fun. And, if you look at his Facebook page, you'll see pictures of him dressed up at Halloween and like, cool outfits for his kids and his daughters. And then when I watched the celebration of life service, and I'm going to have all this in the tribute podcast, because I'm going to make this tribute podcast. I'm going to put a lot of his celebration of life service in there. I think I'm going to do a couple interviews with some of the people that are in his life. And it was just so surreal that a man like that, and he was a good faith man, like he was super into Jesus, like super, just led, like, didn't have to even talk about it a lot. Just the way that Jesus was on earth, that John Rowland was in real life right before our eyes. And I was like, man, that man left a legacy. Like he had nothing left to accomplish on earth except maybe seeing his daughters off and get married. Other than that, as far as business and people that knew him, and like I don't think there was anything else that he could have done. Like there's nothing left to do. And I think that maybe God called him home, I believe, because that left such an impact. And again, I was just one little freckle of his network, like a freckle of his network. And, God called him home, and I think it was because it paused all these entrepreneurs. I mean, thousands of us paused for like the week that we found out that John Rowland passed away, and it took like, because he passed away when he was on vacation out in Utah. And so it took like a week or two to come home, do the services and stuff. And I think everyone around the world was like on pause, and we kept thinking about like our own lives and reflecting about like, wow, how do we love our wife more? How do we love our kids more? How do we make the impact in business that we knew we're here for? How do we be more like John, right? And you know what's crazy about the John Rowland story too? When I was listening to the pastor speak at a service, his birthday was on March 16th. John 3:16. Like it was wild. Like all these like just like, I don't know if you want to call them like serendipitous like things or nuances or what, but
explain the John 3:16 for those who may not know that.
John 3:16, the verse, it's probably like the most popular verse in the Bible. For God so loved the world, he forgave his only begotten son, so that whosoever should perish should have everlasting life. I mean, that is the verse that if you only have that verse, that's all you need. It's just interesting, like all these things about him and the way he led his life. And part of me is like so sad that I didn't get to know him better, and that, and I also feel like, man, I wish I would have called him a few more times. He literally is always the one calling me. And then he's always asking me, hey, who can I love on? Who in your network can I send something to on your behalf? And I'm like, oh, you know me, I'm not going to take that. I'm not taking gift. You know what I mean? Like I'm a man. Like no, you're not. He wanted to send my wife like this like amazing artifact mug, and I just felt guilty of like receiving. And now I realized I just wish I could have let go enough to receive. And but now I know like I need to model more like John like the rest of my life, and so I plan on figuring out how to make that happen as well. There's just been a lot going on in my life, over the last month. The month of August was a very, very God month for me. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some of that. Like,
Okay.
we're filming this so that we're at the end of season 2, so we're kind of doing like a little bit of a recap. You've had some big names on.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that John Ruhlin was not able to be part of that. But
Well, he was actually already going to be scheduled to be on season 3. One
So
of
it
the
was
first
season 3, gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
because I already had Gino shot. He was episode 100, so I was actually, I'm always ahead, right? Like, like we're filming this right now, like, but like this isn't going to come out for probably another month. But yeah, so John was already scheduled to I was going to do this podcast check-in, and then John Ruhlin was probably going to be the first or second guest of season 3, and he's still going to do it, or I'm still going to do it. It's just not going to be with John in the flesh. It's going to be the audience getting to know John. Hopefully they go to see all the things about John. They go down the rabbit hole of the John Ruhlin story, watch all the YouTube videos, get it, know as much as you can about that man, and just be like, wow, how do I be more like John? And then how do I give more than I receive? Because that's his whole thing. Is he wanted to figure out how to give 90% of the things away and only keep 10.
that is such a beautiful thought. It really is. And so I think I want to ask you then, how are you having other entrepreneurs give? How are you having them, send out into the world their energy through the podcast? Like, talk a little bit about how you had different entrepreneurs doing that during season 2. I mean, you had some big names on, but then you also had a bunch of different, like 25 guests this past season.
Yeah, and so just everyone's got their little thing, right? Everyone's got their story. Everyone's got something that they can give to the world, right? And they're giving their story. On the podcast, they're giving their story. And to me, the story is one of the most healing things that you can do, first of all, for yourself, to be able to share, right? To be open and honest, be vulnerable, to be able to share your story, right? Because at the end of the day, I know that, and the reason I started this podcast from day one was because I know stories were powerful. And I know stories had an impact on my life. I was always afraid to share my story. And I didn't even when I started the podcast, I was still afraid to share my story. It literally took me a full year after I started the podcast to even go on another podcast and share my story. Because I was the first, 20, 30 episodes of my podcast, I was just trying to navigate it out. And I was thinking all right, well, I know I'm going to have to share my story one day. And I know that's going to be powerful. Because I remember when I shared my own story with my team at Big Fish, how first of all, just it felt really good to be able to just be open and honest, and thinking that first of all, that parts of my story I was ashamed of, that maybe people would run away from me, but they actually drew closer. And that was healing, right? And then I also know that there's people in the audience, because even at my company, there's parts of my story that people could relate to. And they would come up to me afterwards and be like, oh, I struggle with that. Oh, hey, how'd you get through that? Oh, this is how I did it. And we just start just having open and honest conversations, right? About how to navigate through life's challenges, how to see the silver linings in them, and then how to, figure out how to pick up the pieces and keep moving forward, and knowing that something's going to happen again. But now we have the ability and the practice to be able to get through them a little quicker so they don't hold us down forever. There's a lot of people in this world, me included, that their shame and their insecurities and their fears have kept them held hostage for years. But once you can be set free, and I think a lot of that has to do with sharing. That's at least for me. That's what it's been like. And when I talk to most people, it seems to be a common thing. But I don't know if that's just the entrepreneurs. I don't know if. And I'm not saying you got to go public and get on stage and do a podcast. But even one-on-one with your spouse, even one-on-one with a therapist, even one-on-one with your kid, one-on-one with your best friend, to be able to share some things that are uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And so, when I bring guests on, everyone has a story. I don't care who you are. I literally could go out the street, stop the first car, bring him in the box. They would probably think I'm weird. But as long as they were felt safe, and they have an amazing story too. They just don't realize it because they've been beat up by the world so much to think that yeah, that wasn't so good. Oh, that everything's bad.
Yeah, but those stories are beautiful.
Right,
Like,
because
they're growth stories.
Yeah, and when you find out like what happened in their life future of like, oh, like for instance, I always say like, one of the things that happened to me, my uncle fired me. I hate, and I love my uncle, and I hope my uncle loves me, and I'm sure that he gets tired of hearing like that story but good things happened after that for both of us. Like everything's okay, right? And so just because something dies, like when there's death, there's rebirth. Like that's transformation. Like that's how you go from ugly to beautiful, right? Like that's how you go from bad to
the
good.
Evolution of things.
Yeah, it's like the butterfly, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know like the butterfly, but like isn't it like in the one stage it's kind of gross?
You have
and
the
it's
caterpillar,
and
and you have the chrysanthemum, and then it emerges.
Caterpillars are kind of ugly. Butterflies are beautiful, right? Like I don't know. But there's beauty in it all. Like when you can do it, and when you're going through when you're going through those storms in life, if you can look back and say, man, I remember going through another storm in my life. Guess what? I got through it, and I remember all the good that came out of it. And so, like, I look back at, at that story of like when my uncle fired me, and I felt, man, really alone, really embarrassed, really ashamed. Like, just, I didn't know what to do. I was confused. And it took me a couple of years to like come to grips with that. But then I realized, wow, like I'm creating. I mean, look, this big fish cartoon yellow character, he has a hammer in his hand for the roofing company. And now look, now he's got a heart because Big Fish cares, because I care about people. Now this is the podcast, right? This is like actually more of my mission in life is really to help and inspire and show people to like how to try to live their authentic life. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Just be you, right? And the only reason I've been able to do that is because I followed some sage advice from some people that I looked up to, at first from afar, like authors like, Gino Wickman, Gary Vee, guys like that from like afar that have been living their authentic lives. And like, seems like things are going good for them. And and then their story, they had a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just mentioned two people, and that
and those are people that most people are listening to. Like if you probably heard of them, or you can at least look them up because there's a lot of information on them.
Yeah.
But I guess what? All the guests in between, every single one of them has a story that's very, it's not that it's similar, but the path is similar, right? The ups and downs, the reflections and looking back and being able to see like, wow, like that didn't define me. Like that was just a moment in time that I actually learned and growed from. And actually the best part, and I think a lot of is when you can help other people through that. It's one thing to learn first for yourself. First of all, be aware, then actually learn how to like, all right. And then when you can teach or help someone else, that is like the freeing part. That is the part that like just makes it all worth it. Like it didn't happen in vain. You know what I mean? Like there was purpose to it, right? Like anything, like all the bad has purpose, all the good has purpose. Good things could happen to you. Guess what? And they could turn out to be bad later. Like it's just a continuum of plus and minus constantly. But as long as you keep it very in perspective, because time is a hard thing to conceptualize as well.
Right.
Everyone deals with stuff in their own timeline, but you could also collapse time. I believe you can collapse time if you're able to learn the process of healing and transformation. So like, for instance, if, my brother was murdered, I use that because it's such a sharp thing, right? I believe through my own life experiences and through the education of all the things I was trying to figure out in my life, even before that happened, with my own near-death experience, and then me being in therapy and me becoming closer to God through some of these experiences, it's like I have a blueprint on how to deal with something that's really hard. And so when that hard comes, it's not a speed thing, but I'm able to like see the good that's going to come out of it ahead of time because I've had the experience with good happening. Now I'm stubborn and I need to hit in the head with a 2x4 a couple of times, but it's happening faster and faster now. So instead of me, letting that cripple me for the rest of my life and not being able to get out of bed and go to work or go to like have a family or be there for the people that are here, like I'm able to be a bright and shining light and let it come out of me rather than hold the darkness in. And I'm just really, I think I've been put on earth to like help more people figure that out because it's so true. It's so true in my life. And I can't imagine that our lives being that different as far as like the process on how to like transform. Like,
Yeah.
like I just believe that like if you can start to see it, because I remember what it's like to feel like you're in the muck. I'll never forget when I woke up in the ICU and thinking my life was over because I was so embarrassed of like overdosing on drugs. Like I just like, that is so embarrassing. Like my wife at the time, my mom, like nobody even knew. Like I was like, they're like, oh man, Ben, why are you doing that stuff? Like I was afraid to tell anybody, and I was like holding it all inside. I'm like, man, I'm just such a screw up. And I literally went for like the next year or two, just like very embarrassed and ashamed. And like it's almost like I identified like as that.
Being your persona.
And it wasn't until I went through another hard situation that then I was like grateful, like, man, I'm alive. Holy cow, man. Like I have another lease on life. And now it's like anything bad that happens to me, it's almost like, and I don't want anybody to have to like do a near-death experience to find this. That's why I'm trying to talk about it so much, so that way you don't have to go through a near-death experience. You can model after another low experience that you've had in your life. If for instance, let me ask you real quick.
Sure.
What's an experience that you've had in life that's maybe 10, 15 years ago that at the time was just like end of the world to you? Like, it could be something big or small. It doesn't even matter because it's in your mind. Like it was pretty bad. But then you look back now and be like, man, that happened. And like these good things happened to me in my life after that. And now I can see like the beauty in it. Is there anything like that in your life that rings a bell?
So I have a son who's 22. When he was 6, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I remember when he first got sick, we went in, he had like a bulge in his stomach. And so we went in and you start all the different tests trying to figure out what it is. And so the doctors came in and told us there's all these different types of potential cancers. And when it came back that it was Burkitt's, which is the non-Hodgkin's version of lymphoma, they were celebrating. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? My kid has cancer. Like, why are you celebrating? And then I started to understand. Like, sarcoma had like a 30% chance of survival. Another one had like some of the more rare ones that it could have been were very, very low. Children with non-Hodgkin, and I'm getting chills just thinking about it, but children with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's like 85, 90% chance. And he was stage 3, so he was further along. But his chances of survival were so much better. And going through that period and going through, this was at the old children's hospital, so you slept on like this flip out little couch thing, and like going through that long hours, he talked about a lot of different things that a 6-year-old shouldn't know about, like, am I going to die? What's it like when you die? Those types of things, like you sit and think about, like, oh my God, why am I doing this? What came out of that was I realized how short life is. So I made some decisions to, divorce his dad. And so now I'm with my partner, Bobby, who I absolutely love. And, Tim and I, my ex, we get along well enough. And he has a wonderful wife and I adore her. And I think he's much happier. Like there's someone for everyone. I truly believe that. And like Timmy figured out what he wanted to be in life. Like he wanted to be something with pediatrics. He's kind of like, you kind of like shift your path a little bit, but he still wants to do something in medicine. He found that. It's just very interesting to see. He's a very calm, patient, compassionate person.
Like an old soul almost.
Yeah. And it was like that kind of age through. And like we got to meet a lot of really amazing people. Like he was, on like texting terms with Troy Polamalu for a long time. He would come in and see him whenever they had home games, and he would be coming in on the Friday and he would sneak in and see him and stuff. So I mean, it's one of those things where you start to like interact with the world differently when you have a child that's going through that. Like when he was well enough, he went back to school when he was bald from his chemo. Like those types of things, it makes you look at things differently, and how you interact with the world. And so I think that's really like one of those things that like, yeah, you have to live through the fire to really understand and put things into perspective. Like, all right, nobody's dying today from this.
And then give me something in recent days, like, whether it's in the last year or two, that maybe happened that if this was old Noel, it would have been like that. But like now you see the beauty in it a little bit faster, and you're most like grateful going through a storm. Have you ever had an experience like that? Because that's how it kind of is for me now. It's like when the storm comes, I'm like, oh man, I know like there's a rainbow like right on the other side of this. And like, I don't want to say it's exciting, but like, it's also like, but I can get through it now because of like more understanding, more perspective. Has there been a time like that in your life now where it's like things aren't just that, they're a big deal, but like that you're going to get through it?
Yeah. So I have, just from my previous relationships and just my past, I have a lot of trust issues. And so that's something that I wanted to try to like, I thought that I had beat. And then just a couple little things, like happened that where I was just like, oh, I don't know that I can trust things. And so I finally got to a place where, let's go to therapy together. So Bobby, my partner, and I, we now go to therapy. And it has been so good for me to see. It's very much like Brittany. Just there's things that have nothing to do with him, nothing to do with immediate, or even like short past, that were impacting our relationship. And just learning how to like untangle those and explain. And then very much the same, how my reactions were a 10 and frequent on things, especially, in my mind, like these are all the different overthinking things. So learning how to take it down, and it's less frequent, or, speaking about it rather than just stuffing it all in and seeing what happens later. So I see what you're doing. I appreciate it, but we're flipping it back to you.
Well, no, it was just interesting because sometimes I want to just make sure I'm not the only human that can as we get older, as we get a little bit wiser, if we can really learn from our experiences and not so much figure on I call it the widget, right? Like not like what happened. Hey, I got fired. Oh, somebody died. Oh, like this happened. Your son got cancer. Like not the thing, but the experience of going through it, right? And being present, being grateful, seeing the rainbow, knowing that almost every situation that has a minus, there's a plus. Right. And that's the beauty of life. And I that's why I love sharing these stories, like on my podcast. That's what I'm really trying to hope, to even bring more of in season 3. So it's super exciting.
Yeah. So, since we're on this topic, let's talk a little bit about some of the recent drama that happened with the podcast.
Oh, man. You want to go there, huh?
Yeah, since not everything's all sunshine and roses.
It's definitely not. Oh, man. So... yeah, I guess I'll give context because a lot of my listeners probably don't even know what happened unless you follow me on social media. And you also have to follow me on social media inside the roofing industry to really even really be aware of what's happened. Right. To give context, so we had an episode 99, and I interviewed a guest who was a childhood best friend. I met him when I was 8 years old when I moved to a new school. He was only there for 3 more years, and then he moved to a school, and I lost touch with him completely for probably 20, 25 years. We then reconnected because he was in the roofing industry over in Ohio, and he saw me doing some cool things here in Pittsburgh, and he would reach out every once in a while for roofing advice and tips on being an entrepreneur, like a lot of guys do. And so it was kind of cool to reconnect. And one thing that I learned about this guest is he had I don't know, 5 years ago, he had 4 kids, and his oldest son got sick one day, and then just one morning he never woke up and died. Just total tragedy, right? And I think a year or 2 later, then that's when my brother died. And I remember him coming to the funeral. I remember him being there for me, and then also him holding space for my mom. And he was always kind of trying to figure out life and trying to always be on a healing journey and try to just like a lot of us are, once we come to the awareness of 20 years has went by and I'm still the same person, and I need to change. Right. And, he had a fiance and we became close. They would come over to Pittsburgh, and, his fiance became good friends with Brittany, and yeah, he struggled with porn. And we knew that. He was pretty open about this is a demon he's really trying to fight. And I'll never forget, he called me one day. It's probably been about 1.5 years ago. And he told me the most unthinkable thing. He said, I just got in trouble. The cops are at my office. He's like, Ben, I'm about to tell you something that it's just super embarrassing, and I hope that you'll at least stay on the phone for 20 minutes to talk to me through this. And he told me that, he was on this OnlyFans site, and, he was going back and forth with this girl on there, and he was asking her to do weird stuff and thinking about a stepdaughter, just totally just gross, unthinkable things, right? And so the lady on OnlyFans or whoever it was, turned him in, right? Even they got lines, right?
Because his stepdaughter was 9?
9, 10, yeah, something like that. Yeah, very young, right? And so, the cops had went to the ex-wife's house where his 3 kids were. Obviously went to not the ex-fiance, but fiance's house with the daughter, and did obviously investigations and questions. And so all this happened in the same day, right? And so everybody knew. He was like, obviously, like, you know, just like, I don't know, what's the word? Ostracized or castricized, I don't know, whatever. Like, he was just
Ostracized, yeah.
Ostracized. Is that the right word? I'm not really good with words. He was just completely like, just one minute he's on top of the world, got a business, got a nice little family, like he's on this healing journey. And then the next minute, dude, like nobody wants to talk to him, can't stand it. Like he's just, I can't, it gets gross thinking about it, right? And then I'm also thinking, like, why is he calling me? Well, I know why he's calling me. Everyone calls me when they're at their lowest moment. Not everyone, but like the entrepreneurs that know, because like they know Ben Fisher will hold space for them. Like, I'm not going to judge them, you know, because I never wanted to be judged when, you know, I was going through some of the crap that I went through. And because of that, you know, and again, I was even afraid to tell Brittany. I mean, I remember thinking, like, I cannot keep this a secret from Brittany, but I need to keep this a secret from Brittany because I knew what Brittany had been through in her life.
Oh, okay.
Like this had yeah, like, I mean, like this, like I got goosebumps, like thinking about it. Cause I remember Brittany telling me about that, and about how, and then I remember the next 30 years of her life, or the next, yeah, she was 5, the next 25 years of her life has been hell.
And this was before she had gone. This is after she's gone on her healing journey.
I mean, Brittany was like,
at the time,
yeah. I mean, but it's still affecting her. I mean, like, yeah, it causes all that PTSD, right? Like, and you know, like, you know, but like, you know, but Brittany it actually happened. Like, thank God for Ryan and the stepdaughter and whoever else. Like, it stopped just at the thought and like the text messaging. That was it. It stopped there at least, right? And so I just said, hey, Ryan, I said, like, I don't, like, listen, let me just process this for a second, and like, let me call you back like tomorrow. I said, like, just hang in there, like, don't do anything. The only thing I was worried about is like him dying or committing suicide or something. Cause like, I mean, I don't, like, I don't know, like, what else? I can't imagine to have the whole world, like, not his whole world know that. I mean, like his mom, his ex-wife, like all these women in his life, right? Like, even guys, like, I mean, it's just that's bad enough. But then I think about you as a person inside of like, now what do you do as a human? Like, as like a human where like you literally lost every single person in your life in one moment, gone. And then he calls me and I'm like, oh shit, like, why is he calling me? And then, so I prayed about it, and I was like, and then I had to muster up the courage to tell Brittany what happened. And I was like, I said, I stuttered just like I'm stuttering now. I didn't have words because I didn't know. I breathed through it, and I just said, I think I'm just going to, like, you know, when he calls again, I think I'm just going to, like, I just don't want him to hurt himself. Like, that's all I kept thinking. I had a cousin commit suicide over way less things, like, you know, over a girlfriend or a breakup or something, like way less, something deep and dark. Right. And so, you know, I would maybe talk to Ryan like once a month. And one of the things I found out is that he was trying to immediately put himself into a rehab center, obviously, right? As like, you know, part of the, you know, he still had 3 kids that he wanted to be able to have a relationship with, right? And so, like, you know, and he was already actively working on this. And like, it wasn't like, this wasn't new to him. Like, he just now was finally exposed for the deepest, darkest part of it, right? He couldn't. I remember calling him up. He's like, Ben, I'm having trouble getting into a rehab center because, like, you know, I tell him that there's, you know, I had thoughts about a child and like nobody wants to help me. And I'm like, and I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, well, like, what happens to people like that can't get help? Then do they just keep acting like Brittany's like violate, like, and they just never stop? And like, and then when they do that, and then like some kids could grow up to do that to other kids, or you could just completely run from that, which is probably the best thing that happens, is like you completely like just live a nice peaceful life and just stay away from all of that, right? But I'm sure that because what I've learned in trauma therapy is like trauma begets trauma, you know, and some people just, you know, go different ways with it. But like this sexual abuse, this porn thing, like it's rampant. No one talks about it. And you know, we went to this rehab place for like 90 days and no phone, no connection with anybody. You know, again, no one was wanting to talk to him anyway. So, and he got out and he called me up and he was telling me about it. And, you know, and I know what it's like to go to like a silent retreat for like 2 or 3 days. And it feels like when I do like 2 or 3 days, like at a retreat like that, it feels like doing like 1 hour of therapy is cool. But like when you're completely present for like 2 or 3 days, it's almost like 2 or 3 months of of healing. And when he was talking to me and he was telling me about his experiences and about why, like he was trying to unpack like the why, like, and like, I was like, how did you get to that place? Like, how do people get to that place? And better yet, like I kept thinking about Brittany's, like the 15-year-old boy.
Yeah. Where is that person?
And I kept thinking about where is that person? How, like I actually wanted to interview him like immediately and just find out like what made you do that? Because I'm trying to figure out how to get to the root to this problem, because like I know that like there's, you know, a couple of different ways you can try to fix the problem. You can either just start cutting those people off and like shooting them, killing them, putting them in prison, hiding them on an island, whatever. Or you can try to fix it before it starts, right? Which I think it starts when you're a child, because you probably got to be like, I already know like something happened that's effed up, you know, that did this. Long story short. So, you know, he checked in, you know, he never got in trouble. He never got in trouble for anything. He did have to go through some court appointed rehab or counseling, I think, just to make sure he could see his kids. He had some like, you know, visits where like he had supervised visits, and now, you know, he can see his kids, you know, without supervision and everything like that. He never got charged with a crime or anything like that. And I found out later the reason is because the cops are so busy with actual people that are doing actively like doing like actual abuse, like physically, like that, like they don't even have time to even help all those people and get justice. I know, that's what I mean. So, and then I don't know, 2 months ago, or right after I got done doing the EOS keynote, he calls me up and he goes, I've been talking to so many men, you know, through this place that he went to called Desert Solace. I guess it's a place where people go for that, like porn and like, you know, all the other stuff that goes. Yeah. And he just said, he kept like, there's just so many people. There's so many people. He said, but they're afraid. Everyone's afraid to talk about it. The people that struggle with it are afraid to talk about it out of shame. Right. And like, obviously, like, you know, people judge, right? Like, no, and they should, but like, so they don't feel comfortable talking about it. They also, people don't know where to go get help. I mean, Brian had to pay like $50,000. Like most people don't have
where you have that.
Like most people don't have $50,000 to pay. And like, and so like, and I wasn't sympathetic with him at all. But like when he said like, hey, I want to come on the podcast if you'll have me and share my story, because I know that there's other entrepreneurs out there. I know that there's other people that are living with these deep, dark sins at whatever stage they're at, whether they're just looking at a little porn and they're not caring for their wife, all the way to like, maybe they are doing something the unthinkable, right? Like there's a spectrum, just like with everything else in life. And I couldn't believe that he really wanted to. I said, are you sure you actually really want to do that? I said, like, dude, like, that's like that could like really like, yeah. He's like, yeah. He's like, because there's so many men out there that are just like, they're stuck in it and there's nowhere else for them to go.
Why'd you decide to take it on?
Well, so I think because I was trying to get a lot more understanding, because I kept thinking about like what happened to Brittany, and I kept thinking how that affected her life. And I kept thinking like, I need to get inside. Like I want to, first of all, like I need more people to be, I thought I wanted more people to be aware of like how this could even happen. Cause I think a lot of normal people are like, oh, that's gross. That's disgusting. That's the worst. Like, and then like, they just do that. And like,
you turn your back and go, but that person's still there.
Yeah. But like, they're your neighbor. They're like down the street. They're at the grocery store. Like these people are all around us. And so like, and also like, because I'm not stupid. Like, you know, I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast, you know, I'd say over 50% of them are probably entrepreneurs. And I'd say out of the 50% of their entrepreneurs, I'd say 95% are men.
The roofing industry, yeah.
Especially in roofing, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but like, like just anywhere that's like, that's interested in these stories about entrepreneurial struggles and stuff like that. And I just thought like, all right, well, here's another, I always created my podcast to create a safe place for people to come and share their story, regardless of what it is. I'm rethinking that now after what happened to me. But like, that was really like, hey, a little bit for like, also like, I knew that like, I also knew that would be, if there could be any good that could come out of this, like this story, like, it's like, all right, well, I do believe that like he got the help that he needed and still getting the help that he needs. And he was on the healing journey before. He went on intense healing, and I'm not saying like, dude, I'm not having him over to my house to like, I'm just not, like, he knows that, like, it's nothing personal. Like, it's like, I pick up the phone and like talk to him for a half hour, like, cause I don't know. I don't know if that's wrong or not. I don't think it is. I try to be, I hope I have a friend like that for me. Like if something happens, and I did, I had like, when something, I feel like a lot happened after I released that episode, and I had 200 friends call me and that were there for me and held space for me. And I was like, wow, that's helped me get through kind of like the backlash of like when I posted this podcast. I got basically, I guess canceled is the word. I don't know. Like they even said that like on a thumbnail, like Benny Fisher's canceled from like the roofing industry. And
there was some intense feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I had no idea that there would be so much feedback against me. I just thought like, I watched these documentaries on Netflix, I watched the Sound of Freedom movie. Like, like I was like, I'll never forget, me and Brittany went to watch the Sound of Freedom movie. Like, are you familiar with that movie?
No, I just want to give me a blank stare. Yeah, no, explain it to me real quick.
Just about sex trafficking and like the underground world of that. And it was like a movie made like kind of like with like private funding and like movie theaters. Like I forget the whole story behind it, but like it was a hard movie to get out because of but they got it out anyway, and they like self-funded it through like private donations. I don't know. It's an incredible story.
So it's still the topic that it's hard to get daylight.
Well, yeah, because like even like on mainstream, like no real production companies with a green light. I don't know. There's a lot. I don't know all the answers. I just remember seeing that movie and how powerful it was, just to shed some light into the dark world, right? And I do believe that God's given me the ability to be able to hold space for like dark things, like because I've been in dark places and do dark things, and and who am I to like judge like levels of darkness? Like, and at the end of the day, like I don't condone any of that stuff. I think it's all disgusting. But that doesn't mean I just want to ignore it and pretend like it's not happening. And then also figure out like help. Like all I want to do is help. All I wanted to do is help Ryan by like picking up the phone for him. All I wanted to do is help. Maybe if there's another roofing contractor or even anybody that's struggling with that, or victims that like always wanted answers and like figuring out like how this could happen to me. And I'm not saying every story is the same, but like, I think every little glimpse can like, and then guess what? I got victims that came out and like messaged me and told me like, hey, that was like, I got value out of that episode. And then they started to tell me their story. And sure, if I could go back and do it over again, I wish I had a victim. Like Brittany doesn't even want to, I can't even get my own wife doesn't want to share because she's still really like, it just, the way she describes it makes her feel dirty. And I get upset thinking about it because it's like, I can't imagine like what that is like I remember just like doing drugs and I thought I felt dirty. Like I can't, you know what I mean? Like letting people know that I'm a drug addict. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I felt dirty that I can't imagine like what it's like to like for a woman to like have to endure that for a whole lifetime. And I was so focused on helping that I didn't realize that some people could take it, I don't know. I guess, giving this guy a platform is what most people were triggered about. And it was really more about just bringing awareness to like something. And also, listening to this one man, again, judge him for what he says and what he's doing. And if you don't like his healing journey, if you don't like what he says, Hey man, that's on him. Crucify him at the cross if you want. And I assumed that's what would happen. I had no idea that I would get just, they started attacking the people that were closest to me and my business partners, my best friend and his company. And then my business partner had Big Fish, and they just wouldn't let up. Right. And I ended up taking the post down. Like, it was up in the morning on a Thursday. I was at an all-day workshop. Some people were messaging me about it. But I was literally busy inside of a workshop and didn't really, and again, I don't just do things out of reaction. So like, if people text me like, hey, you take this down, I'm like, all right, are they just like, everyone had an opinion. Like I got 2 messages in the morning that said, man, that was a great episode. That really helped me a lot. He even talks about his son dying in that episode. And the one mom said, I hugged my kid harder that day. She didn't even mention, oh, that was gross and disgusting. She just heard like, hey, I need to hug my kids because I don't know if they're going to die tomorrow. Like, everyone got something different out of it. The most interesting part of the whole thing is, after I took it down like around 5:00, there was so much pressure, on my business partners, the one publicly, disassociated with me and let go of me. And I understand that, like, and I get it, because there was a lot of pressure from the different roofing contractors and roofing industry. Everyone was just really outraged. It seemed like online. Now, that was publicly. Now, what people didn't see was, like, again, I can't even count. 100, over 100, definitely 150, probably under 200 messages that I got of, like, I don't want to say support, but like, hey, I'm really sorry to see this happening to you. Like, we know that you had good intentions. We know that, like, we know what your podcast is about. We know you're just trying to shine a light on like giving people a safe platform to be able to share, right, their stories, so we can all learn from them a little bit and have constructive conversations. And I'm sure they were afraid to, like, speak publicly, because after you saw what was happening in the comments, I mean, it was just, it's kind of like, I don't want to compare it, but I was going to compare it to, like, the stuff you see, like, in politics, like, on both sides. Like, it's just like, sometimes you just only see the one side.
Right.
And if you change the channel over here, then you'll just see the other side. You just don't really, like, yeah. And so for me, like, I felt so bad. Like, I was so heartbroken for my business partners that they had to endure that. And then the companies that I was associated with have to endure this, like, because the only things that were coming out were like a couple of these media personalities were, like, they were making videos about me, not even about, like, like, just trying. And, I don't have any, like, I get it. I've seen them do that stuff before to other people.
You just didn't think they'd come for you?
I don't know. Because at the end of the day, I didn't actually think I did anything wrong. Now, could I have handled it a little bit differently? And hindsight's 2020, right? And could I have handled it a little bit differently? Well, freak yeah, now I would have, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't, like, I'm trying to bring people together. Like, I'm trying to inspire people, like, to work together for good, right? Like, and like, work together to, like, beat this stuff. Knowing that it's there, not ignoring it, but, like, trying to help minimize it, trying to, like, help it get to the root, and also help heal, right? Victims, abuser, like, whatever, right? Like, I try to come from a Christ, like a God, like a Jesus, like what would Jesus type thing. Yes, dude, we hate the sin. It's ugly. It's defiled. Like, all sins are bad, right? But try to love the sinner, right? Like, and then also, have forgiveness and grace. And the one thing, when Brittany told me about her story 2 years ago or whenever it was, I was so mad. Like, I was like, I felt that rage that the people on Facebook that I saw on Facebook, and I felt it. Again, chills right now, because, like, I feel the rage. I feel it because I remember having that rage. But what I had to do so that way I didn't live in that rage, so I had to forgive. The only way I know how to not feel rage is through forgiveness. And the forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's for myself. And I remember doing this when my brother got killed. And I remember driving over to Ohio, 2-hour drive. And I was like, all right, I got to be strong for my family. I got to be strong. I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I remembered, I need to forgive, because if I don't forgive, I'm going to hold on to this hate and this rage for the rest of my life, and I'm going to be bitter, and it's going to affect my relationships at home. It's going to affect my relationships at work, and it's not going to do anything good. Basically, I'm just going to actually let it do the exact opposite of like what I'm here for on earth to do. And so I remember forgiving that killer. And I remember it took me a lot long. It was actually easier for me to forgive the killer of my brother. In a weird way.
Well, your brother's suffering was over on this world. You didn't have to see any type of aftermath from it.
Well, that's good perspective because I didn't understand why, but now I'm starting to get that. But it took me 6 months after Brittany told me that to like, I went to a therapy session and I remember, and I think she took me through this exercise of like treating it like that, like forgiving the person because it's not for the person. That person don't even know. I'm forgiving that person, don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day. But I had to do that to let that go from me. So then that way it wasn't constant reaction for Brittany because like, I mean, like I would, like triggers and triggers and triggers, like just explosions are going to be everywhere. And that's what I saw on Facebook. And I don't know, I was either naive or I was just so focused on the good that could come out of it that like I didn't see anything else. And I thought, you know, and what's wild to me is after I came home from that workshop that I did on Thursday night, Brittany happened to be having a girls' night that night at the house because I wasn't really there all day. And one of the people that she had over was her friend who was this guy's ex-fiance, like the, you know, that had the daughter, right? Which is like interesting that like the universe lined up everything up like that. When I got home, like I was really nervous because I knew she listened to the podcast on the way over because Brittany told me, hey, she's listening to the podcast. I'm like, well, I hope she still comes to your house. Like, I have no idea. Like, I'm sorry. Like, obviously I'm getting all this, like, you know, maybe I did something wrong. And she gave me a big hug and we were crying together and she told me that helped her. And like, all the other stuff that was happening in my personal life at the moment, like all this rage that I was getting from, you know, a lot of people that I thought loved and respected me, but like were just like tearing me down. And I get it. Like I knew they were upset, like whether something happened in their personal life or like I get it. But like temporarily that made me feel so much better that like she was like the one, because the 9-year-old doesn't even know. Like she still to this day doesn't know that because it was just thoughts. Like it was like now I'm sure eventually, unfortunately, I know kids are mean. If another kid, you know, like whatever, but they have a plan for that. You know, the therapist and their family and they all have a really, really good way to kind of be able to handle that. But they just didn't think, you know, at 9 years old, you should probably like talk about that stuff, you know, because like, you know, that'd be a whole nother podcast. Like if she ever wants to come on and explain how she's dealing with all of this.
Did you ever think while you were talking to him that maybe this isn't, I'm not equipped to handle this myself. Like I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist.
Well, I wasn't, but I'm never trying to actually like, I don't have a point. I'm not solving anything or having a point. Like that's where I hope the conversations from the viewers and the listeners and then other guests want to come on to say like, you know, I actually know now people have hit my DMs. Like I have a whole line of people, experts and victims. And, you know, I think that if I really wanted to go down this rabbit hole, I'm not like that, like, you know, it is a little personal to me because about everything that happened in my own family, but it's not like, I'm more about the human, like in like the story of like, all right, like I don't have like I just want to get these stories out, good and bad stories, of just so there's more awareness. And I want to like, because I feel like I'm the guy that like people can feel safe sitting here, sharing a conversation that's real, raw, and emotional. And I know that there's going to be value. Listen, whether we perceive the value, like I believe that there's a lot of people that got good value from it. I think there's a lot of people that got negative value. But I also believe that through that negative value, believe it or not, that conversations were being created and that there'll be healing and there'll be a positive side that comes from it. Maybe just not right this second. Because I know that that's what happens in life. And I didn't go out intentionally try to stir up the pot. I can tell you that. I had no idea. It was like wild to me. Like I was shocked that my whole world could change. You know, that was doing the stuff for BennyFisher.com. Like pretty much that was my biggest client that let go of me. And I was like 90% of my income that generates for like all the stuff that I do to try to help the people in the world, right? Like the podcast, going to different events, like traveling the country, like trying to inspire other people. Like that was like, you know, that's what funded all this, is helping these other entrepreneurs, helping my buddy with his business, growing that. And then I go out and I'm doing all this, right? And so like, right now I'm in like this situation of like, wow, like I just feel like I got hit by a Mack truck. I feel really bad for all the people that were triggered and upset and people that are, have victimized. Like I know what that feels like of like going through it with my own life with even Brittany. So I get all that. And I also get like, some of the good that's come out of it already. Right. And for me in my personal life, it just was really hard to see them attack the people that I love. Like, cause they had nothing to do with it. And like,
Is that why you took it down?
That's why I took it down. Yeah, for sure. And then I also thought like, yeah, I'm also not trying to divide people. Like, I'm not trying to be like a politician where like I'm trying to divide people. Like that is not Benny's MO at all. Will I be direct and will I talk about uncomfortable things? Yeah, but I guess I just have this thing where like I believe that everyone can just be, we can have conversations about it like this. Even though you might agree with black and I might agree with white or red and blue, like whatever. We should be able to sit here and still love each other and have a good conversation about it and not get so angry and mad.
Still see the human on the other side of the opinion.
Yeah, and I totally missed, and like, again, I missed the mark, you know what I mean? And I was just a messenger, and I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, man, like, I don't think I would have ever seen it happen, even if I redid it again. I don't think I would have ever saw that because, there's a lot of triggering shows on Netflix and, different things where like, I even put a disclaimer in the front of the podcast. I mean, because I knew like, hey, like if you like get sensitive about talking about like this type of thing, please don't watch. Yeah, like hindsight's 2020. I'm figuring out how to do things better. Obviously, I'm not a professional podcaster. I guess people think I am because I have 100 episodes in, and most podcasts only make it like 7, I think.
Learn as you go, but
yeah, and this was a great learning experience. And I just want, it really shook me up. But I got closer to God through this moment. Like, there's a lot of good things that have happened. I got to see like everyone, all the people that like care for me, like came forward like in droves and like called me, checked on me, were worried about me, loved me. Brittany was like so good to me through this. And so that was good to really see like, and then the other thing is like, when like one thing ends, there's always new beginnings, and I know my friends and my business associates, like everyone's going to be okay. Like nobody died. It was a mistake. Like a podcast was up for 8 hours. It got taken down. I issued an apology letter, on, the Sunday after. It's on my website. Because I know a lot of people don't have perspective. Most people don't even, like most of the people that were complaining never even listened to one podcast episode I've ever even done, even before this one. And it was an hour and 40-minute podcast. I have a hard time believing, because I took it down and I don't see the stats now. I don't think that many people actually even watched it.
It was just the topic.
It was the topic. Yeah. Maybe the first 10 minutes triggered them, which, again, and I hate to say this, but if I save all the bad stuff for the end, nobody gets to the end. So like I try to, it's a weird thing in media and podcasting. It's like, they tell you like you got to come out strong out of the gate with like getting somebody interested. The hook, right?
You got to hook them.
Get hooked on helping. Yeah, that's so very interesting. Yeah, and you got to, and I didn't do it on purpose. It's just like that's just what people want to know. Like, hey, what's the purpose of this episode? So I'm either in or out. Mm-hmm. And and I just never thought like, like when I see something that I don't agree with, like I don't necessarily like blame. And I guess the only difference is in politics. Like you always want to blame like Fox News or CNN. But like when you watch like documentaries and stuff like that, like of gross things and bad things, like I don't say all, but like you can choose to go deeper or not. Well, but like we never, I don't know. I can't remember the last time, I don't know. People don't really go after the creator, that much. Very rarely. I remember Mel Gibson got got hit pretty hard with the Passion of the Christ, if I remember. And I was so young, I don't even remember like what that was all about or whatever.
I was kind of young too. I'm kind of vague. I think there was comments he made off.
But like at the end of the day, like, I'm just, I'm still in shock by it all, but I still have a lot of empathy for all the people that were hurt. And but I also at the same time have been through way worse things in my life. It is hard, because I feel like part of my like part of me just like got washed away, like gone. Like it's the part of like working with roofing entrepreneurs, helping them grow their business, just holding space for them when they're in times of trouble. Because some of them I know didn't, got caught up in some of this, and they were like very, anti-Benny for a while, and maybe they still are. I don't know. I hope not. But hey, my heart still goes out to them, and if they ever call me up, I'll be there in a second for them. Just because I don't pass any judgment. And it's and it's still so fresh too. I think next year when I do this episode after this recap of season 3, who knows what's going to be in the future. I'm based on my life's trajectory and the things that have happened to me, like usually a lot good comes from things sooner than later. But I have no expectations of it either, because I know I need to let go of those expectations, not try to force anything. Right. So I'm just taking this time, trying to figure out like, all right, cool. Like, do I go back into my roofing company and do I like try to grow that and make it even more awesome and lively? Do I continue with my passion of helping entrepreneurs, and like, what does that look like? Do I just do my own coaching? Do I start my own mastermind? I don't know what people want, like I think I know what people want because I hear the conversations when the one-on-ones. I think people are going to crave community. People want to be connected, right? They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. I want to be part of something bigger than myself. It's one of the reasons why I started a mastermind community with my buddy. Like, but maybe it's time that I create my own community and bring in people that I don't want to be the one to run it and take it to the next level. I just want to create it so I have a place. That's like, I want to have a place to where all the like-minded people can hang out, grow, have conversations, kind of like the way we're talking today, and pick each other up when we're down. It's easy to hey, you're doing great, cheering. But when something bad happens and somebody's that's when we need people the most. Right. But if you can't trust people because you don't know them enough, it's hard to be open and honest. Right. So you got to create that community of trust first, right? And really build that up. And, I do feel like that God's inspired me. I'm a guy that likes to go first. And so there's a little risk in that. There's very risky, obviously. Yeah. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to avoid the risk. I think I can be wiser on how I can be more careful, maybe, but I'm always going to take the risk and be uncomfortable because I think that's where the real growth is. And so, whether I build a community, whether I help somebody else build a community, I've got a couple of people that reached out to me already. They're like, hey, the author of the book Driven, Dr. Douglas Brackman, he's on a mission to find driven entrepreneurs who are of men of God and men of faith. He wants to put 1,000 of them together. He wants to, because he's like a psychiatrist, psychologist. I probably just butchered all the educational stuff and all the letters, but he wants to use the science and the spiritual and, try to understand how we're all wired, put us all in a room together, get us to interact with each other, learn from each other collectively. Because he says if we can do that at a high vibrational frequency, we can have a much bigger impact over the globe. And so, maybe I'm interested in helping him with that. I don't know. I've really just taken these next, month or two. I have a speaking engagement lined up in, I'm going to speak at a corporate event at an Indian reservation. They heard me at the EOS conference and they want me to come in and basically tell my life story and tell them how I get through these things. I look at this little incident with the podcast. When people, when other people think about this, they're like, dude, that's not even a thing. Yeah. Now I get some high profile roofing influencers or, entrepreneurs, we're a lively bunch, roofing contractors. It is a very lively bunch. But they can do a lot of good for the world, you know what I mean? And that's why I love it so much, because it's a lot of personal growth that I've learned in that industry. But, that's not the worst thing I've ever done in the world. I can tell from myself, and I continue to keep on doing it. I'm gonna keep on podcasting. I love it. How I'm going to fund it, I have no idea, but I know God will provide. I'm sure it'll figure out, whether I do, I have a couple one-on-one coaching clients right now. I'm trying to help visionaries become more visionary through all the things that I've learned, through systems in business and also some of the holistic, mindfulness and, therapy type stuff that I've learned, emotional intelligence, mixing everything together, right? Because I believe if you can transform the human to become a better person, they become a better leader at home. They become a lot better leader in their work environment. And I believe that that's the fastest way to heal the world is through the entrepreneurs of the world, because they're the ones that can affect the most change on their communities. And like I said earlier, with all this AI and with all this chaos in the world and elections, we are going to crave community of people that are like-minded, that are working together for a bigger cause than themselves, that are aligned in values, right? And so that's what I want to be a part of, however God calls me to do that, whether it's I'm the third guy, I'm the first guy, I don't care. Like if I'm going to be the first guy for a little while, then I'm going to drop down because I don't want to be.
It's hot up in that seat, huh?
It's not that it's hot. It's just, I want other people to lead, right? Like there's other people that are out there that are better than me that can take the ball and run down the field, right? Like I want to be the guy in the back, like I think pushing it, A friend of mine recommended me this book I think it's called The Trillionaire Coach or The Trillionaire Mindset or something like that. It was the guy that coached all the Silicon Valley guys back in like the 90s. Okay. Nobody knows his name. Like nobody knew his name. And when he died, like a bunch of his friends wrote a book about him. But he was like the silent guy that like was in the back and like whispering in these guys' ear. And there's a part of me that really wants to be that guy because it's a lot more peaceful of a life. I can have a huge impact. I can be at peace. I can spend a lot of time with my wife. I can spend a lot of time with my kids. I can still give a lot of value. I don't always have to be the one out there on the camera, right? Like my podcast, 80% of the time the guest is talking. And I love it that way. Because it's not about me. It's about you. It's about them. It's about the other people that are in the seat. And I don't know who all the guests are going to be this year yet. I'm hoping if somebody knows a guest and you think they'd be great for the Big Fish Cares podcast, let me know. We're only going to do 25 guests.
That's what I was going to say. You've talked a little bit more about like how you're going to adjust the format and the frequency.
Well, I think last year we the first 76 episodes were like every week, because I was like every week we got to get one out, got to be consistent, can't be like those other podcasters that like start and stop,
you
right?
Were pushing, you were forcing it.
Yeah, and then what I realized is like I don't want to do them all on Zoom. I don't have the the bandwidth to like fly everywhere, get people to fly into me. Like it's just a lot, like I don't have any sponsors. Like I'm all self-funded, right? Like it's a passion project of mine. I do this because I love it. Could that change one day? Sure. Like if it can create an opportunity where it fits into my life by design to where like, it all works out to where I can do it every week. I can have the conversations. It's just the guest coming to Pittsburgh. Am I going to the guest? Am I going to batch it in different cities? Like, it's a full time gig, right?
Yeah.
And then to be really present with the guest and spend time with them is is also part of what's in it for me, right? Like I love being able to build that camaraderie with the guest. So then that way, deeper down the road, like you never know when we'll need each other, and we'll be able to reach out because like, it was a great experience, right? This is so much better to me than going to dinner with you. Like I love dinner. I know we did dinner the other night, a couple weeks ago. It's great. But like, this is like, there's no distractions. There's no servers. There's no food getting in our way.
Yeah.
And like, I love it. And I'm not going to let anybody stop me,
But no sponsors.
I mean, if the right,
Patreon.
Here's the thing, if the right, man, because I don't want to be it had to be the right sponsor because like, it had to be someone that like, is still going to let me be me. And I don't want to hurt anybody again. Like I'm like afraid to like hurt somebody. Like I'm afraid to like, I'm afraid to even have another business partner at this point. Like, cause like right now the two that I had are like, the one's gone, like completely disconnected now. Hoping I can repair that, friendship at least, and hopefully we can be friends, cause he was my best friend. And like, it caused a lot of, but he didn't ask for any of that, and like, listen, if it's easier for me to go and like not hurt your business, like great. Like, well, everything will be okay. I'll be okay. Benny's got the best history of rebounding. You know what I mean? Like I always come back, and it's always usually bigger, brighter, and shinier, right? Because like my light just keeps shining. More of the trauma and more of like I'm not hiding from it. Like it's just like it releases. And so like it's I'm actually more free. I'm more authentic now, which is like in one world, like it's scary for me a little bit. I'm like, because I feel that over this past week, I'm like more authentic. I'm like more like maybe this had to happen so I could just keep shining.
Kind of like Brittany's experience then. It had to happen so that she could heal, had to happen so she could have her light shine. This could be your moment of a trauma that you needed, even though things were going well. I thought
I was on, I mean, listen, man, I was like, yeah. And it's just like, it's like jarring, right? It's almost like there was a car crash.
Yeah.
But I'm alive. I didn't get hurt, like physically. Yeah.
Your family still loves you. Your friends are still around.
Yeah. I'm just a lot more time on my calendar. A lot more time on my calendar, and I need to figure out because I'm a passionate person, and I know that my calling is to help other entrepreneurs, and I got to figure out how to do that because like there's a big hole now in my calendar of like the time that I set aside for that, and I still have an amazing, I set aside 20 to 30 hours a week to do that. And and then the travel, getting to meet people and the experiences, and that's still part of my life. That's still part of me and Brittany's life. Brittany is like loves that I get to do that. She likes to come with me like half the time. You know what I mean? We have some dreams that we want to, Gino and Rob Dubay taught me this. Gino Wickman and Rob Dubay from the authors of Shine. They do like a 30-day sabbatical. Well, we were thinking about next May going to Portugal for a month. I've never even been over across the pond.
Do you speak Portuguese?
No. Do I need to?
Small detail. Yeah,
no, I don't
probably
think so.
Not,
they probably all speak English, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like when the Americans come over, I feel like all of a sudden their English gets a lot better. But like, I don't know. Like I want to I want to experience life in other cultures. I want to be able to I'm sure that I can help other, people in Europe, people in Asia, like with business things and some of the things that I'm learning. And so who knows like what'll happen. I'm curious to think, and if anybody listening has any ideas for me, or I'm always open to suggestions on, how you think I can help, right? Like how you think I can make an impact, whether it's in your life, whether it's an opportunity that you may have. Always open to suggestions for sure, because that's how I kind of drive like the way the show goes, and kind of like what the impact that I want to make in the world, right? And it's through listening to people's stories and figuring out where the issues are and trying to figure out how to help people solve those. So I really appreciate you. I know this is the first time you ever interviewed anybody on a podcast.
It is. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews. I'm a firm journalist, but it's, first time I've done this on a podcast. So how'd I do?
I think you did pretty good. How'd she do? Comment, subscribe, all those things. I'm really bad at like promoting my own podcast, but I think now we're going to have to do a better job of it. So I'm looking forward to putting out a blog out every week. I want to write a book. Yeah. You know that. I think you can help me out with that a little bit. We can release some more tidbits through my blog. So if you go to bennyfisher.com /blog, should be a weekly blog out there. A little bit about the guest, since we're doing every other week. I think we're going to do one about more perspective on why I did that guest, maybe what I learned from it. Because I usually don't try to have a hot take. Like I'm not a guy that wants to have a hot take, because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to let people come up with their own, everyone's going to see it different. I could have 100 people look at this pen and they would all describe it to me, maybe not this one because it's pretty simple, but humans are complex, like your Yeti.
I've got my stickered up Yeti.
Yeah. And guess what? 100 people are going to say, let's describe it 100 different ways. And they're only going to remember one of the stickers, and they're not going to remember, and you're going to get 100 different versions. Mm-hmm. And that's what's beautiful about life. Because then we can all learn from all of those stories, right?
It's a beautiful mosaic.
Yeah. So that's all I got. I'm excited for the next episode. We're gonna have Cody. Who are we having next? I forget. Are we doing?
Are we doing the tribute next?
We're either going to be doing the John Ruhlin tribute, or we're going to be doing an episode with a new author. Her name's Christine Marie. We're either going to do that or Visionary Bob Schenefeld. I'm going to his retreat. By the time this podcast airs, I'll be been done with that retreat. And so I'm going to be having an episode with him. Him and Gino are really close. He was one of EOS's early clients. And Visionary Bob's creating something really cool with retreats for visionaries. And he's got a program called I Matter and the Visionary Summit. And he takes people up to a mountain for very like spiritual healing experiences. And
that sounds like a good one.
Yeah. And so we got a lot of cool guests coming up, and I'm excited for the next season. And yeah, thanks again for doing this for me.
All right. Thanks for having me. Thanks for sharing your stories. I appreciate it.